Hey guys, tonight we are going to look straight into the brightest light heaven ever produced, right before it became the deepest shadow. Picture a place not of clouds and harps, but of pure, unfiltered reality, a dimension of such creative energy and light that it radiates with the sound of a billion voices singing in perfect harmony. And in this place, walking among stones of fire, is a being of such staggering beauty and intelligence that all others, save one, are pale reflections. You're looking at the morning star, the anointed cherub. Honestly, if you were to see him in that original state, you probably won't survive this. It's not an attack, it's just a fact. Your human eyes wouldn't just burn. Your very consciousness would probably disintegrate from the sheer overload of that much created perfection. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. In the comments, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's always fascinating to see where these stories are landing. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Part 1. Before there was a Satan, there was Lucifer. This name, Lucifer, isn't a name of malice. It's a title of splendor, meaning light bringer or morning star. He was, by all accounts, the pinnacle of creation, the masterpiece of the angelic host. The prophet Ezekiel, in a passage that many scholars see as a dual lament for both the human king and the celestial power behind him, gives us a breathtaking snapshot. You were the signet of perfection, it says, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. This wasn't just an angel. This was the angel. Imagine a being crafted not from dust, but from the very essence of cosmic brilliance. His covering, as Ezekiel describes, was a tapestry of precious stones: sardius, topaz, diamond, beryl, onyx, jasper, sapphire, emerald, and carbuncle. His settings and mountings were wrought of gold, prepared on the very day he was created. This wasn't armor, this was his nature. He didn't just wear light, he was a symphony of refracted light and music. The text implies that his very form, his every movement, created music. He was the lead worshiper, the one whose entire existence was designed to be a living, breathing, walking anthem of praise to his creator. His position was the highest any created being could hold. He is called the Anointed Cherub who covers. This is a profoundly significant title. The cherubim in biblical imagery are not the chubby bobbies of Renaissance art. They are awesome, powerful beings associated with the very presence and holiness of God. The Ark of the Covenant, the symbolic throne of God on earth, was covered by the wings of 2 golden cherubim. Lucifer was the original. He was the one whose wings overshadowed the very throne of God in the heavenly sanctuary. He dwelled on the holy mountain of God, a place of ultimate authority and intimacy. He walked in the midst of the stones of fire, a poetic description of the blazing, unfiltered holiness of God's immediate presence. He wasn't just beautiful, he was full of wisdom. His intellect was as vast as his appearance was stunning. He understood the why behind creation. He He saw the intricate laws of physics, the mathematics of the cosmos, the subtle psychologies of other created beings. He knew the mind of God better than any other creature, and in all this, he was perfect. The scripture is clear. You were perfect in your ways from the day you were created. This perfection is the key. Lucifer was not created with a flaw. He was not a time bomb waiting to go off. He was not designed with a dark side. His perfection included the most incredible and most dangerous gift the Creator could bestow, a truly free will. For love and worship to be genuine, they cannot be programmed. A robot that says, "I love you," is just following code. A being who could choose otherwise, but chooses to love, is the only being whose love has any meaning. Lucifer had this choice. For ages, perhaps eons, this choice was his glory. His perfection, his wisdom, and his beauty all flowed back to their source in a perfect circuit of love and worship. He was the morning star, the first and brightest light to catch the dawn of God's glory and reflect it to the rest of creation. He was the model. He was the standard. Every other angel, every other being, would look to Lucifer as the prime example of what it meant to be a creature existing in perfect harmony with the Creator. He was the chief, the archangel, the anointed, the beautiful. He had everything. He was second only to God himself. And for a long, long time, that was enough. But the scripture gives us a terrifying pivot. You were perfect in your ways from the day you were created, till iniquity was found in you. It wasn't placed in him. It wasn't an infection from outside. It was found, like a cancer that grows from a single, healthy cell that inexplicably turns rogue. Something began to change within the mind of the Lightbringer. This perfect, wise, beautiful being, standing next to the throne of the universe, looked at his own reflection in the sea of glass. He looked at his wisdom. He felt his own power. He heard the music of his own being. And for the first time, he mistook the reflection for the source. He began to admire the gift more than the giver. This was the genesis of sin. Not an act, not a word, but a thought, a turning inward. The word iniquity itself carries the idea of being twisted, of something that was straight becoming bent. His perfect will, designed to point outward in love toward God and others, slowly, imperceptibly at first, began to curl inward upon itself. It started with a glance, a moment of self-admiration. Your heart was lifted up because of your beauty, Ezekiel writes. You corrupted your wisdom for the sake of your splendor. He began to see his station not as a privilege, but as a right. He saw his beauty not as a gift, but as a possession. His wisdom, once used to magnify his Creator, now began to justify his own burgeoning sense of self-importance. He was, after all, the most intelligent. He was the most beautiful. He was the most powerful. Did he not deserve more? Was he not, in his own way, just as worthy of admiration as the one on the throne? This single, subtle shift in perspective was the seed. It was the first I in a universe that had, until that moment, been defined by thou. And this seed, planted in the most fertile soil in all creation, the mind of the anointed cherub began to grow. It was subtle, hidden under the surface of his continued duties. He still led the angelic choirs. He still walked among the stones of fire. He still covered the throne. But within, in the secret place of his perfect will, the darkness had found its first foothold. The morning star had begun, ever so slightly, to dim. This inward curling pride was not a fleeting, dark thought. It was a philosophy, a new theology born in the mind of the wisest being in creation. It was a logic so seductive because it was built from truths. He was beautiful. He was wise. He was powerful. His corrupted wisdom began to whisper a new, terrible syllogism. The Creator is worshipped because he is the source of all power, wisdom, and beauty. I possess the highest measure of all three in creation. Therefore, am I not also worthy of worship? Why must all glory, all attention, all focus flow in only one direction? Why should the reflection not be admired for its own sake? This is where the prophet Isaiah gives us the transcript of the fall, the secret internal monologue of the morning star. It is a terrifying ladder of ambition, a 5-step ascent into the heart of darkness, framed by the most potent and destructive phrase in any language. I will. It began with his position. I will ascend into heaven, he thought. This is a strange statement for a being already in the highest heaven. But it was not about geography. It was about rank. It meant, I will rise above my given station. I am a servant, but I will be a ruler. I am a creature, but I will ascend to the level of a sovereign. The place he was given was no longer satisfactory. He would now take the place he believed he deserved. This ambition immediately found a target, his peers. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. The stars are a poetic reference to the other angelic beings, the sons of God who sang together at creation. Lucifer had a throne, a seat of authority, but it was among them. That was not enough. His new logic demanded supremacy. He didn't just want to be the first among equals. He would be the only one. His authority, he reasoned, should be absolute over all other created beings. Michael, Gabriel, all the great archangels, they would no longer be his brethren, but his subjects. His throne must be above them all. From his peers, his ambition turned to the very center of divine government. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation, in the sides of the north. This is not a random location. In ancient thought, the sides of the north was the mythical location of the ultimate divine throne, the place of the High King. The mount of the congregation was the place of the divine council, where God presided. Lucifer was saying, I will no longer be a servant on the holy mountain. I will be the one who presides. I will take the judgment seat. I will be the one who calls the meeting, who sets the agenda, who renders the final verdict. He was making a play for the very legislature and judiciary of the cosmos. This thought process, this ladder of pride, was climbing higher, becoming more audacious. He was now aiming at the very nature of God himself. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. Throughout the scriptures, clouds are the veil of God's glory, the Shekinah, the visible manifestation of his unapproachable presence. To ascend above the heights of the clouds was to say, I will penetrate the very mystery of God. I will not be veiled from his glory. I will rise above it. will see as he sees, know as he knows. His hiddenness will not apply to me. It was an intellectual pride so profound that he believed he could, and should, be an equal to the all-knowing mind of the Creator. And all of this led to the final, unthinkable, cataclysmic conclusion. The first 4 I wills were the foundation for the last. I will be like the Most High. This is the atom bomb of the soul. This is the birth of sin. Notice, his wisdom was not so corrupted that he said, I will be the Most High. He knew he was a created being. He could not be the uncreated Creator, but he could be like him. He could be his equal. He could be a rival power. He could establish a parallel kingdom, an alternative government, a second, independent source of will and authority in the universe. He would be his own God. He would be accountable to no one. He would be the originator of his own destiny, the captain of his own soul. He would be sovereign. This internal 5-step monologue was the true fall. The war, the casting out, that was all just the consequence, the ripple effect. The fall happened here, in the perfect, silent, beautiful mind of the anointed cherub, and for a time, no one else knew. He was still Lucifer, the light bringer. The music he produced was still, to all outward appearances, perfect. The worship he led was still magnificent, but it was a lie. It was a performance. His perfection was now a covering, in a new, sinister sense. It was a mask. He was now a being living a double life. Outwardly, the perfect servant. Inwardly, the committed usurper. His vast intellect, once a tool for praise, was now a weapon of strategy. He moved among the stones of fire, but he was no longer warmed by them, he was studying them. He stood by the throne, not in service, but in reconnaissance. He looked at his fellow angels, not in fellowship, but in assessment. Who was strong? Who was weak? Who was content? And most importantly, who was susceptible? His decision was made. His philosophy was set. The iniquity had been conceived and was now fully formed. All it needed was to be born into the reality of creation. The light bringer was about to begin his secret, dark work. He did not act, not at first. An open declaration of his new philosophy would be insane, and Lucifer was anything. But his wisdom, though now corrupted, was still his primary weapon. He knew that open revolution against an omnipotent throne was impossible. But a political coup, a war for the hearts and minds of the other angels, that was a different matter. He was the anointed cherub. He was loved, admired, and trusted. His every word carried the weight of his station, and he would use that weight to begin the most subtle, insidious campaign in the history of existence. He began to slander his creator. The word devil, diabolos, literally means the slanderer. This was the sin he perfected. He didn't shout blasphemies in the heavenly court. He pulled other angels aside into the vast, quiet corridors of heaven, under the guise of friendly counsel or philosophical discussion. He was the highest of all creatures, and he began to act as if he were their truest friend, their advocate, the one who really understood them. Does the law truly serve us? He might have whispered to a seraph, one of the fiery attendants of the throne. Or do we serve the law? We are beings of fire and light, and yet we are bound by "Thus saith the Lord." Is this freedom to a lower-ranking angel, perhaps one feeling the strain of cosmic duty? He would be sympathetic. Your work is endless, and what is your reward? To be one voice in a choir of billions, praising the one who never works, who simply is. He was a master of psychology. He planted seeds of discontent, framing them as sophisticated questions. He never presented himself as a rebel. He presented himself as a reformer. "I am not questioning the Creator," he would say, feigning humility. "I am only questioning his methods. Is this system truly the best one? Look at the potential he has placed within you. Are you truly living up to it? Or are you being held back, kept in a state of perpetual childhood, forever a servant when you have the potential to be more?" He sold them a new form of liberty. He argued that God's government was not one of love, but one of control. That God's demand for worship was not the natural response to his goodness, but the insecure demand of a tyrant. He painted God as a being who kept his creatures in the dark, who hoarded power and knowledge, and who feared their potential. "He knows what we could become if we were truly free," Lucifer would insist, "and it terrifies him." And then came the masterstroke. He presented himself as the alternative. "I have walked among the stones of fire," he would say. "I have covered the throne. I know the mind of God. And I tell you, I can offer you something better. A government based on mutual respect, not blind obedience. A universe where your glory is your own, not just a dim reflection of his. Follow me, and I will not make you servants. I will make you gods." This campaign of misinformation was brilliant, patient, and devastatingly effective. He exploited their free will, the very gift that made their love for God meaningful. He forced them to choose. He wrapped his pride in the language of liberation, his ambition in the guise of enlightenment. He was the light bringer, after all. Who better to offer them true light? And the angels began to fall, not all at once, but one by one. A yes here, a maybe there, a nod of agreement in a secret meeting, a pledge of allegiance sworn in the hidden places of heaven. He gathered them, this master politician, this shadow evangelist. He built a faction. He nurtured their doubts, validated their nascent pride, and promised them a glory that was not God's, but their own. This was not a quick process. It may have taken ages, but the great celestial mind of the morning star was tireless. He worked the ranks, from the highest seraphim to the lowest messengers. He was persuasive. He was beautiful. He was their leader. And when the time came, when the secret rot had spread as far as it could, he had his army. The book of Revelation describes the result with a chilling, poetic image. And his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven and did cast them to the earth. A third, not a handful of malcontents, not a small band of radicals. 1/3 of the entire angelic host. Legions upon legions of beings of light and power, convinced by the slanderer that liberation lay in treason. The whispers had now reached a volume that could no longer be ignored. The harmony of heaven was definitively broken. The perfect unity of creation was fractured. There were no longer the angels of God. There were now two sides, great deception was complete. The I will of Lucifer's heart had become the we will of a rebel army, and the anointed cherub, the morning star, now stood at the head of a dark legion, ready to turn his secret political war into an open, physical one. The whispers had become a roar. The secret, insidious political campaign had finally reached its inevitable, catastrophic flashpoint. The great deception had done its work, and the line was drawn through the heart of the angelic host. On one side stood Lucifer, the glorious morning star, now a dark star, a vortex of gravitational pride, pulling a third of heaven's lights into his orbit. On the other side stood the remaining legions, loyal, heartsick, and horrified. Heaven, the dimension of perfect harmony, was for the first time in its existence divided. And so, the scripture states with terrifying simplicity, "And there was war in heaven." This was not a war of steel and powder. It was not a clash of bodies. It was a war of wills, a war of light and shadow, a war of truth against the lie. The battlefield was the very fabric of the heavenly realm. The weapons were the innate powers of the most formidable beings in creation. Imagine the sound of a star shattering, amplified 1,000,000,000 times. Imagine light so concentrated it becomes a physical force, a spear of pure reality. Imagine the darkness of a black hole, given sentient will. This was the clash. At the head of the loyalist forces stood an archangel, not Lucifer's equal in original rank or beauty, but his antithesis in character. His name was Michael, and that name was itself a battle cry. My child, a question, a challenge that echoes through the cosmos. Who is like God? This was the answer to Lucifer's fivefold I will. Where Lucifer sought to be like the Most High, Michael's very essence was a declaration that no one was. His power was not his own. It was derived, a channel for the authority of the throne. And so the battle was joined. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels. Notice the name change. He is no longer Lucifer, the light bringer. He is the dragon, a great, fiery red dragon. This is not just a poetic image, it's a statement of his new nature. He has become a being of consumption, of chaos, of monstrous, serpentine pride. His beauty has not vanished, but it has curdled. It has become a terrible, mesmerizing, reptilian beauty, the beauty of an oil slick, the beauty of a raging forest fire. The war was beyond any human-scale comprehension. Entire constellations of angels clashed. The stars Lucifer had drawn with his tail were not passive victims. They were now his willing, ferocious soldiers. They unleashed the powers they were created with, turning their light into lasers of destruction, their songs into concussive waves of discord. They fought with the desperate, furious energy of beings who had crossed the ultimate line, who had staked their entire existence on a lie. They had to win, because to lose was to be proven wrong, and to be proven wrong was to be annihilated. But Michael's forces had a weapon that the dragon's army could not counter. It was not a greater strength of will or a more brilliant display of power. It was the truth. The book of Revelation, looking at this same battle, reveals the secret. And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. blood of the Lamb was a reality that existed outside of time, the ultimate expression of God's true character, self-sacrificing, not self-exalting. Lucifer had built his entire case on the slander that God was a tyrant. Michael's forces stood on the truth that God was a lamb. Lucifer's rebellion, built on the lie of self-love, shattered against the reality of God's selfless love. The word of their testimony was their unwavering no, their refusal to break faith. Their loyalty was their power. The dragon's forces, united only by a shared selfishness, had no true cohesion. When the tide of the battle turned, their alliance of pride fractured, each for himself. Michael's forces, united by a shared love for their creator, were an unbreakable phalanx. The momentum became a rout. The dragon's power, which had seemed so immense, so seductive, was revealed for what it was: a void, a vacuum. It was the absence of God, and it had no substance of its own. It could not stand against the positive, creative, living force of God's reality, channeled through his loyal angels. The rebels were pushed back. The light seared the shadow. The harmony overwhelmed the discord. They were beaten, not just into submission, but into expulsion. The text is final. And they prevailed not, neither was their place found any more in heaven. This is the most terrifying phrase. It wasn't that they were imprisoned in a heavenly brig. It wasn't that they were grounded or put on probation. Their very place, their office, their home, their right to exist in that dimension was erased. The anointed cherub who covered the throne no longer had access to the throne. The morning star who walked among the stones of fire was now barred from the holy mountain. The war was over. The verdict was rendered. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil, and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. The fall, which began as a subtle, inward-turning thought, had now been externalized in the most violent, cataclysmic way possible. The light-bringer had fallen from the sky, trailing a third of heaven's stars behind him. A fiery rain of defeated, enraged, and now homeless spirits, hurtling down toward a new, young, and vulnerable world. Fall was not an annihilation. It was a relocation. The war in heaven ended with an expulsion, and the rebels, now defined by their rebellion, were cast out into the earth. This is a crucial, terrifying detail. They were not cast into a distant, fiery pit of containment. Not yet. They were cast into this realm, the newly formed world, the dimension inhabited by God's newest and most unique creation, mankind. The cosmic war was over. The guerrilla war for the human soul was about to begin. And here, the name changes for good. The title Lucifer is extinguished, a star that has gone supernova and collapsed into a black hole. He is now known by his new function, his new nature. He is Satan, a Hebrew word, ha-Satan, that means the adversary. It is a legal term. It is the title of a prosecuting attorney, one who stands in opposition, who challenges, who contests. He is also the devil, from the Greek diabolos, which means the slanderer. His method, perfected in heaven, is now his primary weapon on earth. His entire motivation has shifted. The ambition that fueled his initial "I will" statements has been thwarted. He cannot be like the Most High. He has been definitively and humiliatingly defeated. His pride, however, has not been diminished. It has been concentrated, curdled by rage into pure, unadulterated malice. A new, consuming logic now drives him. If I cannot defeat God, I will destroy what God loves. And what does God love? This new creation, this fragile being of dust and deity, this human, a being made in God's own image and likeness. This, to Satan, was the ultimate insult. He, the anointed cherub, the pinnacle of celestial creation, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty, had been cast out. And God had replaced him, in a sense, with a creature of mud. He saw Adam and Eve in the garden, innocent, walking with God in a way he no longer could, and the hatred was absolute. His strategy was set. He could not attack God directly, but he could attack God's image. If he could mar that image, if he could trick this new creation into the same sin that caused his own fall, pride, self-will, the desire to be as gods, he could achieve two things at once. He could wound the heart of God, and he could prove his original point, that God's law was unjust, that his government was flawed, and that no created being, celestial or terrestrial, could or should remain loyal. This is where his new title, the Accuser, comes into full, terrifying focus. The book of Revelation gives us a glimpse of the heavenly perspective after the fall. And I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, "Now is come salvation and strength and the kingdom of our God. For the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before our God day and night." This is his new job. This is the origin of Satan. He is the ultimate prosecutor in a court he himself has corrupted. First, he comes to earth as that old serpent. He slanders God to Eve, hath God really said. He lies, you shall not surely die. He presents the original lie, the same one that rotted heaven. For God doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. It is the "I will be like the Most High" platform, repackaged for a human audience. And when they fall, when they eat the fruit, when they join his rebellion, he immediately switches roles. He ceases to be the tempter and becomes the accuser. He now has a legal case. He can stand before the throne of God, a position he still seems to have access to, as seen in the book of Job, and he can point his finger. "Look at them," he sneers. "Your precious creation, your image. They are just like me. They are disloyal. They are sinners. And you are just God. Your own law demands their death. You must condemn them. They are mine now. He is the prince of the power of the air, the God of this world. His kingdom is not a physical place. It is a system of lies, a dominion of darkness, built on the same foundations of pride, self-interest, and rebellion he established in heaven. He is the adversary, the one who opposes God's plan of redemption at every turn. He is the slanderer who whispers to us that God is untrustworthy, that sin is liberty, and that we are worthless. And he is the accuser, who, when we inevitably fall for his lies, runs to God and demands our condemnation. The fall of Lucifer was not a simple event. It was the genesis of evil. It was the tearing of reality, the introduction of I into a universe built for thou. It was the transformation of the brightest light into the deepest darkness. And it was the beginning of our story. The war that began in heaven is not over. It has simply changed its battlefield. And we, humanity, are living every single day in the contested territory.